The stars burned with the fire of war, but Earth remained silent. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Luna Station, watching the distant flashes of light that marked another battle between alien fleets. His weathered hands gripped the rail as he counted the explosions. 17 ships had died in the last hour, each flash representing thousands of lives lost in a conflict that had raged for 50 years. "Sir, the morning briefing is ready," said Captain Lisa Hamilton as she approached from behind. Her voice carried the weight of another sleepless night spent monitoring the war's progress. She held a datapad filled with casualty reports and tactical analyses that would make any sane person weep. Morrison turned away from the viewport. "How many worlds this time, Lisa?" "3 more systems have gone dark. The Kithvar are pushing deeper into Zephyrian space, and the Veltar are responding with psychic bombardments that leave entire populations in catatonic states. The destruction is getting worse each month." They walked together through the corridors of Luna Station, passing walls lined with monitors showing refugee movements and diplomatic communications. Earth had become the galaxy's information hub, carefully documenting every aspect of the three-way war that consumed civilized space. The Terran Defense Fleet's primary mission was not to fight, but to watch and record. The briefing room filled with officers from across human space. Colonel Amy Brooks sat rigid in her chair, her jaw clenched as she reviewed the latest atrocity reports. General Pete Adams drummed his fingers on the table, a nervous habit he had developed over years of watching alien civilizations tear each other apart. Commander Roy Thompson, fresh from his diplomatic mission to the outer colonies, looked exhausted from dealing with endless streams of war refugees. "The Kethvar Empire has escalated their biological warfare program," Hamilton began, activating the holographic display. Images of poisoned worlds appeared above the table, their surfaces scarred by weapons designed to kill slowly and painfully. "Intelligence suggests they're targeting civilian populations to break enemy morale." Brooks slammed her hand on the table. "We have the technology to stop this madness. Our ships are faster, our weapons more precise, and our tactics proven against every simulation we've run. How long do we let this butchery continue?" "Our orders are clear, Colonel," Morrison replied firmly. "Earth maintains strict neutrality. We observe, we document, we provide humanitarian aid to refugees, but we do not take sides. The moment we enter this conflict, we become part of the problem. With respect, Admiral, we already are part of the problem. Our neutrality enables these monsters to continue their genocide. Every day we do nothing, millions more die." The debate had become familiar over the years. Military officers argued for intervention, while civilian leadership demanded adherence to the neutrality doctrine that had kept Earth safe. President Dan Carter had made the policy clear in countless speeches to the Terran Assembly. Humanity would not repeat the mistakes that had led to this galactic war. The war had started as a territorial dispute between the Kethvar Empire and the Zephyrian Collective over mining rights in the Andros sector. What began as border skirmishes had escalated when the psychic Veltar Dominion chose to support the Zephyrians, leading to a three-way conflict that consumed entire star systems. Each faction possessed devastating weapons and the willingness to use them without regard for civilian casualties. Earth had been contacted by all 3 factions in the early years of the conflict. The Kethvar offered military alliances and shared conquest of inferior species. The Zephyrians promised technological advancement in exchange for human industrial capacity. The Veltar attempted to influence human leaders through psychic manipulation, failing only because of humanity's unusual mental resistance. President Carter had rejected every overture with the same response: "Earth will not participate in galactic warfare. We offer our services as neutral mediators when all parties are ready for peace." The alien factions had initially dismissed humanity as irrelevant, a young species too weak to matter in galactic politics. This dismissal had proven beneficial, allowing Earth to establish monitoring stations and refugee camps without interference. Human ships moved freely through space marked as neutral territory, providing medical aid and documenting war crimes. Dr. Helen Foster had established the largest refugee medical facility at Mercy Station 7, treating victims of biological and psychic warfare with techniques developed specifically for alien physiology. Captain Ben Parker commanded the patrol vessel USS Liberty, which escorted refugee transports through dangerous space lanes. These humanitarian missions had earned humanity respect among non-combatant species throughout the galaxy. The monitoring data revealed the true scope of the war's devastation. Entire civilizations had been wiped from existence, their homeworlds reduced to radioactive wastelands or twisted into nightmare landscapes by psychic attacks. The ancient Kelleran Republic, once masters of stellar engineering, existed now only in refugee camps scattered across human space. The peaceful Mirrorlands, known throughout the galaxy for their art and philosophy, survived as a handful of traumatized survivors who spoke only in whispers. The psychological profiles are troubling, Dr. Foster reported during medical briefings. We're seeing trauma responses unlike anything in human experience. The Veltar psychic attacks don't just kill, they rewrite consciousness itself. Some refugees no longer remember their own species or homeworlds. These reports strengthened the resolve of Earth's leadership to maintain neutrality. They had seen what warfare could become when conducted with advanced alien technology and unlimited hatred. Humanity would not add its voice to this chorus of destruction. Yet tension grew within the ranks. Young officers trained in Earth's military academies struggled to understand why their advanced capabilities remained unused while atrocities occurred daily. Captain Kate Sullivan, commanding the patrol vessel USS Guardian, had submitted multiple requests for permission to intervene in civilian massacres, only to have each request denied. The Terran Council met regularly to review the neutrality policy, but the vote remained consistent. Earth's representatives from Mars, Europa, and the outer colonies agreed that intervention would only escalate the conflict. They had studied the historical records of every galactic war, learning from the mistakes of species that had chosen sides too early. Admiral Morrison understood the frustration of his officers, but he also understood the wisdom of restraint. Humanity had spent 50 years carefully observing alien warfare, learning their tactics, studying their weapons, and mapping their territorial boundaries. If Earth ever did enter the conflict, they would do so with complete knowledge of their enemies and allies. The morning briefing concluded with updated refugee numbers and supply requirements. 3 million displaced beings currently lived under human protection, representing dozens of species whose homeworlds had been destroyed or occupied. Earth's industrial capacity strained to provide food, medical care, and shelter for this growing population of war victims. As the officers filed out of the briefing room, Morrison remained behind with Hamilton. They watched the tactical displays showing fleet movements across dozens of star systems. The war showed no signs of ending, and each side seemed determined to achieve total victory regardless of cost. "Lisa, sometimes I wonder if we're right to stay out of this mess," Morrison admitted quietly. "The day we start questioning our principles is the day we become like them, sir. Earth stays neutral because someone has to remember what peace looks like." Outside the viewport, another distant star flared and died as alien fleets clashed in the eternal darkness. Earth watched, recorded, and waited, hoping that someday the galaxy would grow tired of war and ask for help rebuilding what had been destroyed. The alarm screamed through Luna Station at exactly 0347 hours, jolting Admiral Jake Morrison from his brief sleep. He rolled out of bed and grabbed his uniform, muscle memory guiding him through the motions he had practiced for decades. The red emergency lights bathed the corridors in an ominous glow as he rushed toward the command center. Captain Lisa Hamilton met him at the elevator, her face pale with shock. "Sir, we have a situation in Sector 7. The Kethvar fleet under Commander Vex Thule has crossed into the Terran neutral zone. They're being pursued by Zephyrian forces and heading straight for our patrol ships." Morrison's blood ran cold. The neutral zone had been respected by all factions for 50 years, serving as a buffer between human space and the war zones. No alien military vessel had ever violated its boundaries, understanding that such an action would force Earth to respond. "Get me Captain Parker on the Liberty," Morrison ordered as they entered the command center. The massive displays showed the tactical situation in real time. 2 human patrol vessels, the USS Liberty and USS Guardian, were moving to intercept the Kethvar fleet. Behind the alien ships, Zephyrian pursuers maintained their chase, apparently willing to follow their enemies into human space. Captain Ben Parker's face appeared on the main screen, his expression calm despite the approaching danger. "Admiral, the Kethvar ships are not responding to our hail. They're maintaining course toward the inner colonies. Request permission to enforce the neutral zone boundary." "Granted, Ben. Use standard intercept procedures." Try to redirect them back to open space without engaging. Remember, we don't want to give anyone an excuse to claim we took sides. The bridge crew watched tensely as the Liberty and Guardian moved into position. The human ships were smaller than the massive Kethvar dreadnoughts, but their advanced technology made them formidable opponents. Earth's military doctrine emphasized precision and efficiency over brute force, designing ships that could outmaneuver and outgun larger vessels. Captain Kate Sullivan's voice crackled over the communication system from the Guardian. Liberty, I'm reading weapons charging on the lead Kethvar vessel. They're not slowing down. Parker's response remained steady. Guardian maintained defensive positions. Admiral, attempting final diplomatic contact with the alien fleet. Morrison watched as Parker broadcast on all frequencies, offering safe passage through a designated corridor back to neutral space. The message played in multiple alien languages, clearly explaining that the Kethvar ships were violating Terran neutrality and must change course immediately. Commander, Vexthol's response came as a burst of plasma fire that struck the Liberty's forward shields. The human ship shuddered under the impact but held position. Parker's voice came through strained but professional. Guardian, Liberty is taking fire. The Kethvar commander is apparently using us for target practice. Ben, get out of there, Morrison ordered, but he knew it was too late. The Kethvar fleet had committed to their attack, and Parker would not abandon his duty to protect human space. The Liberty returned fire with precise beam weapons that carved through Kethvar shields like paper. One alien cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash, but 3 more dreadnoughts closed in on the human patrol vessel. Parker maneuvered brilliantly, using the Liberty's superior speed to avoid the worst of the enemy barrage. Captain Sullivan moved the Guardian into support position, her weapons adding to the defensive fire. The 2 human ships fought with deadly efficiency, but they were vastly outnumbered. The Kethvar commander seemed determined to destroy them, rather than simply pass through human space. Admiral, this is insane, Colonel Amy Brooks said from her position at the tactical station. They're deliberately attacking our ships in our own territory. This is an act of war. Morrison nodded grimly. Get me President Carter on emergency channels. He needs to know what's happening here. The battle continued to rage on the main screen. Parker's tactical skills kept the Liberty alive longer than should have been possible, but the Kethvar numbers were overwhelming. One by one, the alien ships focused their fire on the human vessel, finally breaking through its shields. Parker's final transmission was cut short by static. Admiral, they're not trying to get past us. They want to destroy us. Tell Earth that we held the line. Guardian, get clear and report to... The Liberty exploded in a ball of superheated plasma, taking Captain Ben Parker and his entire crew of 93 officers with it. Morrison felt the loss like a physical blow, knowing that he had sent good people to their deaths trying to maintain a neutrality that the aliens clearly did not respect. The Guardian fought on alone, Captain Sullivan using every trick in the human tactical manual to avoid the same fate. Her ship's weapons carved through 2 more Kethvar vessels before overwhelming fire finally breached her defenses. Sullivan's last words were a complete tactical report on enemy capabilities and weaknesses. Commander Vexthol's fleet continued into human space after destroying both patrol vessels. The Zephyrian pursuers, seeing the destruction of neutral ships, broke off their chase and retreated. They wanted no part of a conflict with Earth, understanding that the Kethvar had just made a catastrophic mistake. President Dan Carter arrived at Luna Station within 6 hours, his usual diplomatic composure replaced by barely controlled fury. He reviewed the battle recordings in silence, watching good people die because they had tried to enforce a neutrality that alien warmongers chose to ignore. How many dead? Carter asked quietly. 247 souls, Morrison replied. Every person on both ships. Parker and Sullivan followed protocol perfectly. They tried diplomacy first, used minimal force, and died protecting human space. The president's hands clenched into fists. And what was Vexthol's excuse for this massacre? General Pete Adams pulled up the alien commander's official response. He claims our ships were interfering with legitimate military operations. Says the neutral zone doesn't apply during hot pursuit of enemy forces. He's demanding that we stay out of Kethvar military affairs. The sheer arrogance of the response stunned everyone in the room. Not only had the aliens violated human space and murdered human personnel, but they were blaming Earth for the incident. Vexthol's follow-up message was even worse. calling humans cowardly scavengers who hide behind words while real warriors fight. "Sir," Colonel Brooks said carefully, "the Terran Assembly is demanding immediate retaliation. Colony governors are asking why we maintain neutrality with species that murder our people for sport." Carter nodded slowly. "Schedule an emergency session. Every representative needs to see these recordings. They need to understand what neutrality costs when dealing with monsters." The news of the attack spread through human space like wildfire. Memorial services were held on every colony world as citizens mourned the first military casualties in Earth's long peace. Captain Parker and Captain Sullivan became heroes overnight, symbols of duty and sacrifice in the face of alien aggression. Ambassador Roy Thompson submitted formal protests to every galactic council, demanding justice for the unprovoked attack. The response from other species was mixed. Some condemned the Kethvar action, while others suggested that Earth should have stayed completely out of contested space. The Kethvar Empire's official response was dismissive. They claimed the right to pursue enemies wherever they fled, regardless of neutral zones or diplomatic protocols. Commander Vexthul himself appeared in a broadcast message, showing trophy recordings of human ships being destroyed while mocking Earth's pathetic weakness. Admiral Morrison stood again at the observation deck, but now he watched different lights in space. Human memorial beacons marked the positions where the Liberty and Guardian had died, bright points of remembrance in the endless dark. For 50 years, Earth had maintained peace through careful neutrality. But some enemies only understood strength. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity's restraint should never be mistaken for weakness, and that those who murdered human peacekeepers would face consequences they could never imagine. Lieutenant Sam Wright had always been good with codes and intercepted communications, but the message he decoded 3 weeks after the Liberty incident made his blood freeze. He read it twice, then 3 times, hoping he had made a translation error. The Kethvar communication was crystal clear in its intent and horrifying in its implications. Wright grabbed his datapad and ran through the corridors of Luna Station toward Admiral Morrison's office. The young intelligence officer burst through the door without ceremony, his face pale with shock and anger. Morrison looked up from casualty reports, noting the lieutenant's expression. "Sir, you need to see this immediately. The attack on our ships wasn't random or accidental. Commander Vexthul specifically targeted the Liberty and Guardian as part of a planned operation." Morrison took the datapad and read the translated Kethvar communication. The message was from Vexthul to his fleet commanders, sent hours before entering human space. It outlined his intention to demonstrate Kethvar superiority by destroying neutral ships and to send a message to other cowardly species that hiding behind neutrality offers no protection. "This was murder," Morrison said quietly. "Cold-blooded, premeditated murder of our people for propaganda purposes." The revelation spread quickly through Earth's military and political leadership. President Carter called another emergency session, this time with the full Terran Assembly participating via secure channels. The representatives from Mars, Europa, and the outer colonies listened in stunned silence as Wright presented his intelligence findings. Captain Parker and Captain Sullivan died not because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, Wright explained to the Assembly. They died because a Kethvar commander wanted to make an example of human weakness. The entire attack was designed to humiliate Earth and discourage other neutral species from interfering with Kethvar operations. The response from human colonies was immediate and furious. Governors who had previously supported neutrality now demanded military action. The families of the dead crew members called for justice. Public opinion, carefully maintained in favor of peace for 50 years, began shifting toward war. But Commander Vexthul was not finished with his provocations. Intelligence reports began flowing in about Kethvar raids targeting human refugee camps and medical stations. The attacks followed a disturbing pattern, focusing on facilities that provided aid to war victims from all factions. Dr. Helen Foster was treating Zephyrian burn victims at Mercy Station 7 when the first raid occurred. She looked up from her patient to see Kethvar fighters approaching the medical facility. The station's shields were designed to protect against accidents and debris, not military assault. "This is Mercy Station 7 to any Kethvar vessels," Dr. Foster broadcast on emergency frequencies. "We are a medical facility treating civilian casualties under galactic humanitarian protocols. We are not a military target." The Kethvar response was a barrage of plasma fire that overwhelmed the station's defenses within minutes. Dr. Foster continued working, even as the facility's hull began to breach, trying to save as many patients as possible. Her final log entry described HFY troops deliberately targeting medical equipment and patient wards. Captain Jack Turner arrived at Mercy Station 7 aboard the hospital ship UTS Compassion 2 hours after the attack. What he found defied every convention of civilized warfare. The medical facility had been systematically destroyed, with evidence of HFY soldiers executing wounded patients in their beds. Turner's report to Earth Command was devastating in its clinical detail. 647 civilian casualties, including 412 refugees from various species. 42 human medical personnel confirmed dead, including Dr. Foster. Evidence suggests systematic execution of patients unable to evacuate. Medical supplies were not looted but deliberately destroyed. The images from Mercy Station 7 spread through human space like a plague. Citizens who had never seen alien warfare up close were confronted with the reality of HFY brutality. The carefully maintained separation between Earth's peaceful civilization and the Galactic War collapsed. Overnight, Colonel Amy Brooks addressed military commanders across human space via encrypted channels. The HFY are not randomly attacking our facilities. Intelligence indicates a coordinated campaign to eliminate human presence outside Terran space. They're systematically destroying every refugee camp, medical station, and supply depot we operate. More attacks followed in rapid succession. Refugee Camp Delta 9 on the edge of Zephyrian space was bombed from orbit, killing 3,000 displaced civilians and 27 human aid workers. Supply Station Gamma was destroyed while delivering food to survivors of a Veltar psychic attack, the explosion visible from 3 star systems away. Each attack was accompanied by HFY propaganda broadcasts claiming that human facilities were legitimate military targets because they aided enemy casualties. Commander Vexthul appeared regularly on these broadcasts, mocking Earth's inability to protect its own people and challenging humanity to stop hiding behind their precious neutrality. The final provocation came when Vexthul captured a human supply convoy carrying medical equipment to a Kelleran refugee settlement. Instead of simply destroying the ships, he forced the crews to watch as he had the medical supplies burned in space. The 38 human personnel were then executed one by one while Vexthul broadcast the executions across the galaxy. Captain Lisa Hamilton was among the officers who watched the recording in horrified silence. The HFY commander's message was clear. Human neutrality was weakness, human compassion was foolishness, and human lives were worthless. He promised to continue killing humans until Earth learned its place as an irrelevant species. He's trying to provoke us into the war, Hamilton said after the recording ended. Every attack is designed to push us past our breaking point. Admiral Morrison nodded grimly. The question is whether we let him succeed or find another way to respond. But Vexthul had made a critical error in his campaign of terror. He had assumed that humanity's long neutrality indicated weakness and cowardice. He failed to understand that Earth's restraint came from strength, not fear, and that 50 years of careful observation had given human military forces detailed knowledge of every alien faction's capabilities. President Carter stood before the Terran Assembly for what would be his most important speech. The chamber was packed with representatives from every human colony, their faces reflecting the anger and grief of their constituents. Behind them, memorial displays showed images of every human killed in HFY attacks. For 50 years, Earth has maintained neutrality in galactic conflicts, Carter began. We believed that staying out of war was the moral choice, that our role was to preserve peace and help rebuild when the fighting ended. We were wrong. The assembly listened in absolute silence as Carter detailed each HFY atrocity. He showed recordings of destroyed medical facilities, murdered refugees, and executed aid workers. He read the names of every human who had died trying to maintain neutrality in the face of alien aggression. Commander Vexthul has made his position clear, Carter continued. He will continue murdering human civilians until we abandon our humanitarian efforts and retreat to Earth. He believes our compassion makes us weak and our restraint makes us cowardly. Today we prove him wrong. The vote was unanimous across every human colony. Executive Order 2387 Alpha was signed within the hour, officially ending Earth's neutrality and authorizing military action against the HFY Empire. For the first time in 50 years, humanity would go to war. Admiral Morrison immediately began implementing battle plans that had been carefully prepared but never used. Human fleets moved to secure positions throughout Terran space, while intelligence networks activated across the galaxy. The species that had spent decades watching and learning was finally ready to act. Commander Vexthul received the news of Earth's declaration with laughter, broadcasting another mocking message about primitive humans trying to play at war. He promised to crush human forces as easily as he had destroyed their medical stations and refugee camps. The Kethvar commander would soon learn that humanity's long silence had been preparation, not weakness, and that those who murdered innocents would face justice delivered with precision and overwhelming force. Operation Silent Thunder began at exactly midnight, Terran Standard Time. Across human space, warships that had waited decades for this moment powered up their weapon systems and engaged their stealth drives. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of Luna Station, watching as his carefully planned assault unfolded with mechanical precision. Captain Alex Reed commanded the first strike force aboard the UTS Retribution, leading 12 destroyers toward the Kethvar supply depot at Vega Prime. The human ships moved like ghosts through space, their advanced stealth technology rendering them invisible to alien sensors. 50 years of observing galactic warfare had taught Earth's engineers exactly how to counter every detection system used by the warring factions. Retribution to Luna Command, approaching target coordinates. No sign of enemy detection. Beginning attack run in 30 seconds. Morrison watched the tactical display as Reed's ships closed on their target. The Kethvar depot was a massive installation that supplied 3 entire battle fleets, protected by what the aliens considered impenetrable shields and heavy defensive batteries. They had never faced human kinetic weapons. The Retribution fired first, launching a spread of tungsten rods at incredible velocity. The projectiles struck the depot's shields like bullets through paper, the kinetic energy overwhelming defenses designed to stop energy weapons. Secondary explosions rippled through the installation as ammunition stores detonated. Within minutes, the depot was the expanding cloud of debris. Reed's ships had vanished back into the darkness before the Kethvar defenders could even locate their attackers. 3 enemy fleets would soon find themselves without fuel, ammunition, or spare parts, stranded in space while their war machine ground to a halt. Similar attacks occurred simultaneously across Kethvar space. Captain Nina Clark led engineering teams that disabled communication arrays with surgical precision, leaving enemy commanders blind and unable to coordinate their forces. Colonel Amy Brooks commanded ground operations that captured supply bases intact, denying resources to the enemy while preserving them for post-war reconstruction. The Kethvar initially dismissed these attacks as insignificant raids. Commander Vexthul broadcast his usual propaganda, claiming that human pinprick attacks only proved their cowardice. He promised swift retaliation against Earth's colonies once he dealt with more serious threats. But the reports flooding into Kethvar command centers told a different story. Human forces were striking everywhere at once, targeting the logistical networks that kept alien fleets operational. They avoided direct fleet engagements, instead crippling the infrastructure that made large-scale warfare possible. Captain Jack Turner, now commanding a battle group aboard the UTS Vengeance, demonstrated human tactical philosophy during the Battle of Kepler Station. Rather than destroying the heavily defended Kethvar facility, his ships used precision strikes to disable its power generators and communication systems. The station surrendered within hours, its garrison intact but helpless. Luna Command, this is Turner. Kepler Station secured with minimal casualties on both sides. Enemy personnel are requesting medical assistance for wounded. Station facilities are undamaged and ready for humanitarian operations. This approach confused and terrified the Kethvar more than simple destruction would have. They understood brutality and overwhelming force, but humanity's precise application of just enough violence to achieve specific objectives was alien to their military thinking. Human commanders seemed to predict every tactical response before it was made. The reason for human effectiveness became clear as the campaign continued. 50 years of careful observation had given Earth complete intelligence on Kethvar military doctrine, ship designs, and command structures. Every alien weakness had been cataloged and countered. Every strength neutralized by superior human technology and tactics. Captain Lisa Hamilton, now commanding the fast attack squadron aboard the UTS Justice, intercepted HFY communications during a raid on their forward operating base. The alien transmissions revealed growing panic among enemy commanders who found themselves fighting an opponent they could barely detect, much less defeat. "They're calling us shadow warriors and ghost fleets," Hamilton reported to Morrison. "Their tactical computers can't analyze our attack patterns because we're using strategies they've never encountered. They're starting to retreat from forward positions." The psychological impact of human warfare proved as devastating as the physical damage. HFY troops who had terrorized civilian populations for decades suddenly found themselves facing an enemy that struck without warning and disappeared before retaliation was possible. Their morale collapsed as reports spread of entire supply lines being severed by invisible attackers. General Pete Adams coordinated the broader strategic campaign from Earth Command, using human intelligence networks to identify critical targets throughout HFY space. The aliens had built their war machine around massive centralized installations, making them vulnerable to precise strikes that cascaded through their entire operational structure. "The beauty of our approach," Adams explained to his staff, "is that we're not trying to conquer territory or destroy their civilization. We're simply making it impossible for them to continue fighting. Every target we hit reduces their ability to wage war while preserving their ability to rebuild in peacetime." The Zephyrian collective in Veltar Dominion watched human operations with growing amazement and concern. Both factions had fought the HFY for decades without achieving decisive results. Yet Earth was systematically dismantling their mutual enemy within months of entering the conflict. Ambassador Roy Thompson received urgent communications from both alien governments requesting meetings to discuss the changing strategic situation. The Zephyrians offered alliance terms that would have been unthinkable before human intervention. The Veltar attempted to open psychic communications with human leaders, only to discover that Terran mental defenses had improved dramatically over 50 years of exposure to psychic warfare. "They're all scared," Thompson reported to President Carter. "The HFY are panicking because they can't fight what they can't see. The other factions are terrified because they realize they never really understood human capabilities. Everyone wants to negotiate now." The turning point came when human forces captured Commander Vex Thul's flagship during what the aliens thought was a routine supply run. Captain Reed's strike force had tracked the vessel for weeks, learning its schedule and security protocols before moving in for the capture. The operation was executed with typical human precision. Stealth ships disabled the flagship's engines and weapons, while boarding parties secured the vessel without damaging critical systems. Vexthul himself was taken prisoner along with his entire command staff. Their capture broadcast across the galaxy as proof of human military superiority. The HFY commander, who had mocked human weakness, found himself in a detention cell aboard a human ship, facing war crimes charges for his attacks on civilian targets. His propaganda broadcasts were replaced by human transmissions offering surrender terms to remaining HFY forces. Morrison stood once again on the observation deck of Luna Station, but now the distant flashes of light represented HFY installations surrendering, rather than alien fleets destroying each other. In less than 6 months, humanity had achieved what 3 alien civilizations had failed to accomplish in 50 years of warfare. The galaxy was learning that Earth's long neutrality had not been weakness, but preparation. Humanity had studied every aspect of alien warfare, while developing technologies and tactics specifically designed to end conflicts quickly and efficiently. When finally provoked beyond endurance, they had unleashed a military capability that no one had imagined possible. The war that had consumed civilized space for half a century was finally approaching its end, brought to conclusion not by superior firepower or ruthless brutality, but by human precision, intelligence, and the moral authority that came from fighting only when all other options had been exhausted. The surrender came faster than anyone had expected. 6 months after Operation Silent Thunder began, the last HFY battle fleet transmitted their unconditional capitulation to Admiral Jake Morrison aboard Luna Station. The once mighty empire that had terrorized the galaxy for decades had been reduced to scattered groups of refugees begging for mercy from the species they had tried to humiliate. Commander Vex Thul sat in a detention cell aboard the UTS Justice, his proud warrior facade crumbling as he faced the reality of complete defeat. The alien who had mocked human weakness now refused to look his captors in the eye, understanding that his actions had doomed his entire civilization to judgment by the very people he had tried to destroy. President Dan Carter stood before the newly constructed Galactic Tribunal on Mercy Station 7, the same location where Dr. Helen Foster and hundreds of refugees had been murdered by Kethvar forces. The rebuilt facility now served as a symbol of justice rising from tragedy, its halls filled with representatives from every species in known space. Judge Carol Stevens, Earth's most respected legal scholar, presided over the War Crimes Tribunal with unwavering fairness. She had insisted that Commander Vexthul receive proper legal representation, ensuring that human justice would be seen as impartial rather than vengeful. The proceedings were broadcast across all civilized worlds, establishing precedents for future international law. Commander Vexthul, Judge Stevens said as the alien was brought before the tribunal, you stand accused of crimes against sentient beings, including the deliberate targeting of civilian medical facilities, the execution of prisoners, and the systematic murder of refugees under galactic protection. How do you answer these charges? Vexthul's attorney, a human lawyer appointed by the court, advised him to plead for mercy based on military necessity. But the evidence against the Kethvar commander was overwhelming. Video recordings showed his forces deliberately targeting hospitals and refugee camps. His own communications proved that these attacks were planned acts of terror, rather than military operations. Captain Lisa Hamilton testified about the attack on the Liberty and Guardian, her voice steady as she described watching good people die for simply trying to maintain peace. Captain Jack Turner presented evidence from Mercy Station 7, including Dr. Foster's final logs documenting Kethvar troops executing wounded patients. The trial lasted 3 weeks, with witnesses from dozens of species testifying about Kethvar atrocities. The tribunal heard testimony about poisoned worlds, destroyed civilizations, and the systematic targeting of non-combatants throughout the war. Vexthul's defiant speeches about warrior honor fell flat against the mountain of evidence showing his force's brutality. The verdict was unanimous. Commander Vexthul was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to life imprisonment on a secure facility in human space. His officers received sentences ranging from decades to life, depending on their level of involvement in war crimes. The message was clear. The galaxy would no longer tolerate those who targeted civilians. President Carter addressed the Galactic Assembly for the first time in human history, speaking to representatives from every known civilization. The chamber that had witnessed 50 years of failed peace negotiations now listened to a species that had ended the longest war in galactic history through decisive action. The Terran Accords that we present today are not a peace treaty, Carter explained to the assembled delegates. They are a framework for preventing future conflicts through mediation, economic cooperation, and mutual defense against aggression. Earth offers its services as neutral arbitrator for disputes between civilizations. The Accords established new protocols for interstellar relations, with humanity accepting the role of galactic peacekeepers. The document created the Galactic Mediation Council, the Interspecies Criminal Court, and the Emergency Response Force. Earth's advanced military would serve as the enforcement arm for decisions made by representative bodies. Admiral Morrison oversaw the establishment of the Galactic Peacekeeping Force, integrating officers from all former warring factions under human command. The sight of Kethvar, Zephyrian, and Veltar officers working together under Earth leadership sent a powerful message about the new galactic order. Captain Alex Reed, promoted to admiral after his success in Operation Silent Thunder, established training centers throughout human space where alien officers learned human concepts of proportional response and civilian protection. The curriculum emphasized de-escalation techniques and precision tactics, designed to end conflicts with minimal casualties. The transformation was remarkable to witness. Kethvar officers who had once glorified destruction learned to value preservation and reconstruction. Zephyrian tacticians adapted human strategies that emphasized intelligence over technology. Veltar commanders discovered that psychic abilities could heal trauma rather than cause it. Captain Nina Clark led the massive reconstruction effort across formerly war-torn systems. Her engineering teams worked alongside alien specialists to rebuild destroyed worlds, restore damaged ecosystems, and re-establish trade routes that had been severed by decades of conflict. The galaxy slowly began to heal under human guidance. The Galactic Recovery Fund, established with resources from Earth and contributions from peaceful species, provided aid to war refugees and funding for reconstruction projects. Entire civilizations that had been reduced to scattered survivors began rebuilding their homeworlds with human assistance and protection. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, who had taken over Dr. Foster's humanitarian work, established medical centers throughout the galaxy that treated both physical and psychological wounds from the war. Her teams developed new techniques for helping species recover from trauma, combining human medicine with alien healing traditions. The three former warring factions signed comprehensive peace agreements under human oversight. The Kethvar Empire was dissolved and replaced with a democratic federation that renounced territorial expansion. The Zephyrian Collective agreed to share their advanced technology for peaceful purposes. The Veltar Dominion pledged to use their psychic abilities only for healing and communication. 5 years after the war's end, President Carter stood once again before the Galactic Assembly to deliver his farewell address. His successor, President Maria Rodriguez, would inherit a galaxy transformed by human intervention from a battlefield into a community of cooperating civilizations. When Earth first stayed out of the Galactic War, Carter reflected, we believed that neutrality was the path to peace. We learned that sometimes peace must be actively defended against those who would destroy it. Our species has grown from neutral observers to active guardians, and we accept that responsibility with both pride and humility. The assembly rose in unanimous applause, representatives from hundreds of species acknowledging the debt they owed to humanity. Earth had proven that the greatest strength sometimes lay not in rushing to war, but in knowing exactly when and how to end one. Admiral Morrison, now retired, stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed peace station orbiting Earth. The lights in space no longer marked battles between alien fleets, but represented trade ships moving between worlds and construction vessels, building new colonies. The galaxy had found peace at last. A new generation of human officers took their posts across civilized space, no longer as neutral observers but as active protectors of galactic order. They carried with them the lessons learned from 50 years of watching war and 6 months of ending it. That peace was not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. The story of Earth's transformation from neutral watcher to galactic guardian became legend throughout known space. Future generations would remember that humanity had stayed out of the war until the wrong alien provoked them, and in doing so had changed the galaxy forever. The lesson echoed through history. Those who mistake restraint for weakness do so at their own peril.